reconvene, we'll move immediately to Ms. Elizabeth Marshall of the Ontario Landowners Association, who's with us via teleconference. Ms. Marshall, you're there? Ms. Marshall?
Yes.
So you have 5 minutes to make your introductory address. Please begin now.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Elizabeth Marshall. I am not a lawyer, and I do not give legal advice, but I am a legal researcher for Green and Associates law offices and have had my research used by other law firms. I am the Director of Research for the Ontario Landowners Association and do legislative research for MPs, MPPs, and municipal officials. I'm an author of various reports, articles, and have a book in its second edition. In May of 2012, I was elected to the Board of Directors of the Canadian Justice Review Board, and in 2014, I was appointed to the Steering Committee of the International Property Rights Association. There seems to be some confusion and or misinterpretation by government and the Ministry of Energy of the Electricity Act. The purpose of the Act, Section 1, states that the government and ministry is to ensure the reliability of electricity supply in Ontario through responsible planning and management, to protect the interests of consumers with respect to prices, to promote economic efficiency and sustainability in the generation, transmission, distribution, and sale of electricity, and to ensure that Ontario Hydro's debt is repaid in a prudent manner and that the burden of debt repayment is fairly distributed. If, after the committee, the purpose of the Act is amended and or changed, it may direct one into thinking that government is not working in the best interest of the people and government would be operating in bad faith, wouldn't it? Under the purpose of the Act, there is the fiduciary duty of government to protect the interests of consumers with respect to prices and to promote economic efficiency and sustainability in the generation, transmission, distribution, and sale of electricity. Does allowing electricity pricing to skyrocket and implementing uneven payment of this enormous debt a prudent plan to ensure that the burden of debt repayment is fairly distributed? Does this violate the government's and ministry's fiduciary duty to the people of Ontario considering the purposes of the Act? With the report from the Financial Accountability Officer, it would seem there has been and continues to be mismanagement in the Ministry of Energy, as Ontario Hydro's debt is to be repaid in a prudent manner and that the burden of debt repayment is fairly distributed. The purpose continues that government isn't to ensure responsible planning and management of electricity, and yet there are 6 separate corporations being questionably operated under this Act, increasing costs of administration, adding to the burden of the cost of electricity. That being said, is it not another violation of the fiduciary duty of the minister? And in the numerous renewable energy contracts and the agreement between the government and the CREA Consortium leading to an even greater mismanagement of Ontario's financial well-being and the onus on government to be fiscally prudent. Does this mismanagement violate the purpose of the Act, and is it bad governance that equates to the violation of the government's fiduciary duties to the people of Ontario? Perhaps it is time for government to cancel all past, present, and future contracts for renewable energy projects, amalgamate at least 5 of the entities stated in the Act, cancel the Samsung Korea Consortium Agreement, and in light of the purpose of the Act, uphold government's fiduciary duties to the people of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. We'll begin with the Progressive Conservative side, Mr. Pettipies.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Ms. Marshall, for your deputation this morning. You covered quite a lot. I wonder, the government has introduced this act called the Fair Hydro Plan Act. Can you give me just a brief overview of that, in your opinion, what this act does for you?
Well, unfortunately, it spreads the cost of electricity and makes it unevenly distributed to future generations. The onus should not be on the future generations for the mismanagement of the electricity file as it is today.
Okay, so they have the government has said that you're going to receive a reduction in hydro rates if this act is passed. Does that not make you feel better?
Well, there shouldn't be the debt in the first place, and secondly, it's going to be what, for 4 years? So then we will be having increases again on our electricity bills. And then when you look forward to future generations, it is not our duty or our responsibility to be placing that type of onus on future generations. That is mismanagement, and it is a violation of a fiduciary duty.
Okay, would you have any, you say in 4 years, and that's what this pretty much does, we're going to get higher rates in 4 years. Do you see any solutions that we could work on or that should be worked on to mitigate those increases?
It is my opinion that due to the renewable energy projects and the cost that we are paying now, those contracts should be either renegotiated or canceled. I find that having Ontario and Canada having been before the World Trade Organization courts in regards to the 2009-2010 contract, there is a lack of responsibility in regards to these contracts. And so unless those contracts are removed, then we are still going to be looking at the same debts over and over, and they will increase based on the fact that if there is any unbalanced budgets, the percentage will go up.
Removing contracts can be a dangerous process. Do you have any, have you seen these contracts? Do you think there's any way of doing that?
Well, I am basing this on the fact that the contracts, when you look at the Samsung Korea Consortium contract, the majority of these contracts are based on an affiliation with a monopoly, and we have on the committee 4 members from the Korea Consortium as advisors.
Thanks, Ms. Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Pettapiece. To the NDP, Mr. Tabbins.
Ms. Marshall, I want to thank you for attending this morning's committee meeting. I think you were very clear in your arguments. I have no further questions. I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tabbins. To the government side, Mr. Potts.
Yes, likewise, Ms. Marshall. I appreciate very much you participating in the proceedings. I appreciate your concerns, and I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Potts, and thanks to you, Ms. Marshall, for your deputation for the Ontario Landowners Association.